Yeshua wasn't lying when he said that it would be easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. If you actually look at the church of Laodicea, the rebuke to that church is that they've been woken up. They're lukewarm. They've got the chance to be red hot, but they turned that chance down. Why? Because of covetousness. They covet the preeminence of men. They're ashamed of the Messiah. They don't want to fulfill the royal law. So they're ashamed, so they won't do it. So that means that they're coveting what other people perceive them to be like. They don't want to stand out like a sore thumb. They don't want to lose friends. They don't want to lose this present world. You could take it to the letter or to like physical reasons. They covet a job, luxury in this life, things like that. But really this is a deep spiritual condition in men that they don't want to give up this life and their reputation for the word of God. So he says, because you're lukewarm, I'm going to spew you out of my mouth into great tribulation. That means they weren't ignorant. That means they heard the call and they didn't take the calling. Or they started to plow and they turned from the Holy Commandment. And the Holy Commandment is Leviticus 19. It's the law that the Messiah elevated. He ended the sacrificial law. He elevated the royal law. That means that you rebuke your neighbour when they're in sin instead of stoning for sin. That's the hardest commandment, and that's why it fulfills the law. And the disciples even say, because Yeshua even says this to the rich young ruler, I think it is. How will I enter life? Keep the commandments. Starts listing the 10 commandments. Basically rebukes the rich young ruler for his covetousness. And he gets sad because he loves this present world. In this world, if you are in fellowship with this world, or you're coveting the ways of this world, or you covet the preeminence of men and you won't give up your life, relationships, whatever test it is, you'll be spewed out of his mouth and into great tribulation. Because it even says in the church of Laodicea, they're lukewarm, but they think that they're rich. They think they're increased with goods. They think they're deceived into thinking that they're not going to get spewed into great tribulation. Because they woke up a little bit and then they're in denial about the calling. And then they end up going into great tribulation because they didn't continue in the calling. But they think that they're rich. They're full of pride. They return to eat and drink with the drunken, which is an idiom about the drunkards of Ephraim. The drunkards of Ephraim, they're drunk on pride. It's the Antichrist spirit of error. They're all idioms. It's a spirit of deep sleep. So they're not literally drunk. And it tells you that in Isaiah 29, not with wine. They are drunk on the spirit of slumber that God gives them up to because they won't obey. So now the people who start to wake up and start to get sanctified, because they can't get rid of the 10th commandment, they can't stop coveting. And they become lukewarm instead of going red hot and going all the way. Being Jacob his servant, they return to eat and drink with the drunkards. That's what Matthew 24 is about, the evil servants. And because they do that, 7 more demons enter into them. This is Matthew 12, 43 to 45. This is 2 Peter 2, verses 20 to 22. Proverbs 6, 16 to 19, and Proverbs 26. Is it 26:11? The true proverb that the dog returns to its vomit. What's the dog about? Isaiah 56. These dumb dogs, they cannot bark. They won't bark. What's barking? Ezekiel 2 and 3. Warning the people. They won't do it. They're dumb dogs, which means they can't speak. They won't speak when they're supposed to speak. But then, because 7 more demons enter, they start to smite their fellow servants, and they open the pie hole when they shouldn't open the pie hole. And they start slating the good servants because they're doing the right thing. And there's all sorts of reasons. It's like when you realize how much faith the good servants have to put themselves out there and say these harsh, sharp things, sharply rebuking the fables day in, day out. And there's these covetous people who were woken up a little bit, but they don't have the love of their neighbour. So the spirit withdraws from them. When those 7 more wicked demons enter, they just have nothing but hatred for the Spirit of God and the people that endure in the thing that they were supposed to do. The calling that was supposed to save them and their family and whoever God appointed for them to find. But because they actually don't go and find those people. The people they were meant to find are held in ignorance and they get put on the second Exodus. They're the ignorant people in the church that ironically we're trying to find. But because so many people are being called right now through the Spirit of grace, they're being called, convicted to go and find their lost brothers and sisters. But the amount of people, the many called, they're not choosing to do it. So they won't be Jacob the elect. And that is why so many people are held in ignorance. Because no one has taken the calling but a few. How will Jacob rise, for he is so small? How is Jacob going to save so many people? Because Jacob is only going to wake up, truly, fully wake up his brothers and sisters that are in that few number, that are in the very elect. The rest of the people were warned. So in tribulation, it's Ezekiel 33:33, in Deuteronomy 4:30-31, they're going to remember what the watchman said to keep the holy covenant, and they're going to do it in tribulation, and then in tribulation, through the fire of affliction, Laodicea, they're going to do the royal law then. And it's going to be a lot harder than now, and they're going to regret not taking the call in now. So women, let this not be you. Take your call to be a maidservant. Listen to the Spirit of grace. Titus 2 tells you the Spirit of grace convicts you to keep the covenant and then to be sober. Remember, the drunkards of Ephraim are drunk but not with wine. They're asleep. What's the opposite to being asleep? 1 Thessalonians 5, being a watchman. Be a watchwoman, be a maidservant. Go and warn your sisters. And when you're wise enough, go and warn your brothers through questions and learn how to prophesy to them. But just do not turn down the calling. I know it's hard to sharply rebuke fables, but if you have faith, see the disciples say to Yeshua, when he says that no rich man's going to enter heaven, it's going to be easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. They say, so how will anyone be saved? He says, with man it's not possible, but with God anything is possible. We can do all things through Yeshua, which strengthens us with the Spirit of grace and truth that convicts us to do this and gives us the truth. He gives us the words to speak, to convict people. So always speak with salt, sharply rebuke the fables, comfort the feeble-minded, be part of the 1 Thessalonians 5 group, and take the calling.